Hey, welcome to Q&A, where you ask your questions on faith and life, and I do my best to provide a biblical perspective. Hey, well, we've got a question which I have never thought of, so let's jump straight in and see where we get to. When did the Old Covenant actually come to an end? Was it Jesus' birth? Was it at his death on the cross? Was it the resurrection? Was it Pentecost? Or was it when the veil in the temple was torn? That's a great question. And as I say, it's not a question I've ever considered. So let me just, off the top of my head, uh, you've said, was it his birth? Well, I don't think you could say it was his birth, because throughout Jesus' ministry, he was teaching people to fulfill the law, to obey the law, sorry. And certainly in Matthew 5:17, he said he didn't come to do away with it, but to fulfill it. And that didn't actually happen until his death and resurrection. So I think we could rule out his birth. You've said, was it his death on the cross? Well, certainly, off the top of my head, as he hung on the cross, he turned to the thief who was beside him, one of the thieves who was beside him, and said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." So I guess the question then becomes, was he speaking in anticipation of his actual death that would open that up? Or was he saying that, yes, today, at the end of today, you will be with me in paradise? Because remember, when he died, he wasn't resurrected for 3 days. So I guess for me, I'm going to say I don't think his death actually was the actual demarcation of the end of the Old Testament. Having said that, you've raised a possibility or an example that I had not thought of, which is, was it when the veil in the temple was torn? And that's a good observation, because you're right. The connection between the tearing of the veil is with Jesus' death, and the tearing of the veil represents the abolition, so to speak, of that which stood between God and people. So at one level, certainly, I think you could argue that perhaps the Old Covenant, because its conditions, it actually kept us from God. The law kept us from God. So at one level, you could argue that the tearing of the temple marked the end of the Old Covenant. However, the fulfillment of the law involved the resurrection of the Messiah. So at a deeper level, I don't think you could actually say that it is the tearing of the veil as such, because to fulfill the requirements, Jesus not only had to die, but he had to rise victorious over sin and death to satisfy the law and to bring in the new covenant. So yeah, it's a good question. Maybe just thinking off the top of my head, just thinking about the examples that you've given, that those various points, one of the things that strikes me is that each of them, or many of them, have some validity in and of themselves, but when you see it together, they don't. And you've raised the issue of Pentecost, and certainly Pentecost is generally seen as the birth of the church, which you could argue is the birth of the new covenant, and you can argue that you can't be a new without the abolition or the doing away with the old. So again, I think that points to what I was getting at, was that maybe instead of thinking of where is the actual line, that it's like a continuum, it was coming to an end through Jesus' ministry, and certainly his death and resurrection brought it to an end at the same time as ushering in the new. And so instead of thinking of the end has come, the new has begun, like a line, that we think of it in terms of the kingdom of heaven, where Jesus talks about how the kingdom of heaven is here, but not yet. In the same way, there's this like overlap. The end of the old covenant fades into the beginning of the new. And so we see it as like a process. So yeah, so that's a good question. I'll give it some more thought. And indeed, just thinking about the question and about when did it start and when did the new covenant by implication begin, I think about in terms of our lives as believers. We are under the penalty of the law, which is the old covenant, until we are born again through grace until we confess Jesus as Lord and we enter into the new covenant. So again, to me, it would point to that sort of that continuum where there's no hard and fast line, but we move from one to the other, like a journey, so to speak. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. It's a great question. Why not post them in the comments below? Don't be shy. You're bound to have a thought or two. But hey, as always, if you've got questions on faith and life, jump over to slido.com, use the hashtag askhamish. I would love to hear from you. But that's it for now. Until next time, God bless.